So today's guest is Cindy Ryan, who is a single mom raising two beautiful boys. She spent close to 20 years living a life designed based on society's expectations until she completely exploded and left a perfect six-figure job and followed her sole passion, which is that of energy healing. So Cindy, thank you very much for being on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here.
You are very welcome. I'm very excited to dive into what you're doing because, we definitely handle and work with a lot of hearts and entrepreneurs here, and energy healing is definitely there. And obviously, corporate setting is the perfect place to explore energy healing. So I'm surprised you had to go and venture on your own to do that. So I'd love to know more about your story and how that came about and what that transition was like.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's interesting. We're in a different time now. Well, it's exciting. It feels more acceptable energy work in general than it was when I first began this journey. I don't know where you want me to start, but I'll just kind of go dive in. But I left my marriage about 10 years ago. And when that happened, I started to kind of come back to myself, I say. And with that, it was like these little nudges or little hits of like, what is this? What am I feeling? All these sorts of things started to happen. And my job at the time, I was a childcare licensing officer, regulations, monitoring government work. And so very straight and narrow was my job. And so at this other side, which was sort of whimsical and magical, I just started kind of to open to it. And I decided kind of to sort of test the waters of that. What is this that I'm kind of feeling? And I will say I grew up in a family where we did not discuss that at all. So I kind of kept it secret and started to read some books and kind of figure out why I was feeling this way. And actually, I'd gone to see a naturopath for some chronic pain that I was dealing with as I'd left my marriage. And she had handed me this book that explained what an empath was. And that was the first time I'd heard the word empath. And it all made sense to me of what I had gone through in my life. And I was like, this actually makes sense. So I dug, and I don't know if you've heard empath, it's a word now that's used quite often. And it's just feeling things on a deeper level. So I ended up I haven't had a series of accidents in my life, but I ended up having quite a serious accident yet again and got a hit on the head. And I went and I found Reiki. And at the time, Reiki seemed really out there to me. I was like, okay, I will go and I will see what this Reiki thing is. And I really felt out there to me at the time. And I went into this room because I just needed somebody to fix this thing that was going on in my head. And because I tried all the medicines and all the typical things I would usually do for it. And I was blown away by what I was seeing and what I was feeling and the calm that had come over me. And it was so beautiful. And so I went again and again. And she had said, you could train, you could do this for yourself. And so I decided against what I typically do. And I said, yes. And I trained in 2 levels of it. And then I decided to open a studio space in my house. And I offered it to people for free over and over and over again, while still working during the day. And I couldn't explain how beautiful this was, but I just had to do it. So every night I would have another session, and I had little kids. I had a toddler at home. And what was happening during those sessions was I could understand, like, let's say there would be a guy there. I would be like, I know he has a tattoo on his back. Why do I know he has a tattoo on his back? And so I would say, do you have a tattoo of a bird? And he would say, yes. Why do you know? I don't. So that kept happening. Like, why do I know that he has a tattoo on his back? Or suddenly I would get some message like, I think your grandma wants you to have tea. And why do you know my grandma wants? And so this kept happening over and over again. And I realized I went to go see an intuitive, and I was like, I think there's something strange happening. So she said, well, you are a psychic medium. And that took me a really long time to process. And I didn't want to tell anyone, because for me, that meant I was a witch. And so I kept that a secret. And I had to figure out, like, what would that mean for my two boys? And what would that mean for my friends? And what would that mean for my life? And so I sat with it quietly for about 6 months. I might cry, sorry. But so I decided I would then have people come to my house, and I would practice on them and see if what she said was true. And sure enough, I kept getting it right over and over and over again. So I was like, okay, well, what do I do with that? And I remember there was just a moment with my youngest son, and I thought, and I don't need to get into full details of it, but I thought, if I want him to live his true, authentic life, I have to live mine. And so I decided I was going to be this. And I didn't know how that was going to work or what it meant, but I was going to step into it fully. And so I began. And that was about 6 years ago. And I worked every single night, every single morning, while working full time, to build a reputation, to study, to research, and to feel like what I was doing was real. I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have an iPad. I had one phone. And I built an entire business off a phone. And I created a podcast, which I edited off a phone. I built a business which has grown worldwide. I had people say, I created a website off my phone. And I had people tell me, like, you need this, you need this, you need this. And I was like, I don't have any money. So no, I can't. And I remember sitting outside my office one day thinking, like, I'll just keep doing this until I die. Like, I don't know how it's going to happen, but this is what I'm meant to do. And then the next day, a client said, I will build your photos, your website, all of your online packaging, everything for free. And I said, okay. And I was near exhaustion, like fully near exhaustion, because I've got 2 boys and I've got whatever. And she did. And then I remember I was in my office because I'm working 40 hours during the week. And I thought, I need a sign to show me that I can get out of this job. And sure enough, in my inbox came a job offer to leave my job. And it was a 3-month contract. And it would be enough money to get me out of a 17-year job. And I sat there and went, holy, I don't know if I can swear. Holy
By
crap.
all means, yeah. If you can make this as pirate podcast as you want. Yeah.
Now, I sat there and stared at that and thought, if I say yes to this, I am losing a job with a pension, with security. But that 3 months could be enough time for me to say yes to this business, to myself, to who I trust. So I didn't sleep for like 3 days. And then I said yes. And I leapt. And I worked like a wild animal for those 3 months. And then I began again. And now I am blissful, intuitive, and I am doing this completely flying, and trusting it, and things are meeting, and it is incredible. I know I am probably stopping myself from what it can be completely. But I am here. So I'm ready. So that is my story.
Beautiful. Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for sharing the story and the way that you shared it, right? Like there was a lot of passion behind how you shared, and I understand it because there's very intense moments in that story. So I just want to acknowledge you for that first and foremost. The other question I had for you, so at one point the emotion was starting to kind of boil over, right? You were like, oh, like I'm gonna cry, etc. And by the way, others have certainly done that on the podcast, so anything that comes up is by all means welcome. What was so emotional for you in sharing the story?
I think it's when I reflect, and I mean, I definitely cry. I'm a crier, but I think it's the realization when I look back at how scary it, and I think, sorry.
It's okay. Nothing to apologize about, by all means.
When I realize how big this has been, that I trusted that leap. It's fucking scary. And I did it. And how many leaps I've taken. I sometimes look back and go, holy crap. So sometimes I just look back in the rearview mirror of my life and go like, that's pretty amazing.
100%, because there's many people in your shoes that wouldn't do what you did, especially in the situation that you were in. So what I'm curious in is, what is the actual emotion? Is it pride? Is it relief? Is it like what's actually the emotion that's coming up?
I think now, because I almost my personality is, I think it's pride, to be honest. I think in the moment I almost go to like, yes, I can. Yes, I can. And I don't think about it. Like I think I'm very I think things through. Sometimes people think I'm so whimsical that, because I'll be like, we can, of course we can, it's great. But then when it comes to me, I'm like, what is it? Where is it? How is it? And I do it. And I'm like, I think so many things through that I almost separate myself from it in order to get through. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But then when I think back, I go, oh my God, I can't believe I actually made that decision. But then on the other side, I'm like, oh yeah, so worth it.
And do you allow yourself to acknowledge yourself and feel that pride unfiltered?
I think that I am slowly now. I don't think I ever have.
Yeah. I obviously don't know you, but I can feel that, because it's like the emotional release of saying your story. It's almost like that pride was just wanting to like come out, like don't hold me back, like this is amazing for your own self. But like you said, the catalyst for it was to walk your talk for your kids, which is amazing on its own. And then not to mention the ripple effects of that and the inspiration you can be to others. But it's just like, there was like so much constriction in getting that out there. And then the kind of relief and the sadness of like, why do you hold this back? Like this is, you know what I mean? It's a gift that I'm trying to hide, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So what comes up for you as I reflect that back?
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't know why I hold that back. I think that comes with, like, it's interesting. I think I think it's something when you look at exactly who I am, right? Like what my biggest gift is something we are taught to hide. And even in reflection with people now, they'll often say, like, do you have a degree? Well, I do have a good degree, but do you have a degree, or are you in, like, what is it that you do? So unless you can say you are a doctor or you are this, that it is still something that is so, it's still questioned sometimes, right? So I think for me, it still is something I'm working through, where I can show the stories and I can share the things and go, and myself go like, this is amazing. But there's still the people that kind of go, well, like, I went to actual help. And then I think, oh, okay, well, maybe. So that's my pieces that I'm still working through, I think, with it.
And to what degree does that narrative of needing the credibility
Yes.
like gets priority over your actual life experience?
100%. I think that's part of it.
So elaborate more on that. What do you like? What resonates?
I think even just like thinking that through of where it is my pride, I think, where, interesting. I think that's where I'm starting to go say now, like, I actually am quite proud of this. I actually do feel quite good. And there, the part where I used to feel quite small is now it's shifting. Like there is a huge shift, even in the last 6 months, from where it was. So does that make sense? What it used to
Yeah.
be, that I used to be, I think it's still there. I think that is the piece that holds me back, but it's not what it used to be. Like, it used to be a big difference.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like there's the shift is in the standards. Like, what are the standards that I have to meet in order to get the permission to show up, right?
Yes.
Because there was this sentiment of like, the reason it was so hard and so emotional to share such an amazing story is because fundamentally, like, who gave me permission? Where's my credibility to share that as relevant to other people for doing these things out into the world, right?
Yes.
And it's like, if I had a degree, if I harbor that need for the external to let me know that I have permission to pursue this, then it's okay. But so much of my life has been spent hiding, doing this in secret, hoping that it's successful, but that nobody knows about it at the same time, right? Now I'm stepping into a world where, like, my experience is enough. Me knowing this guy has a tattoo that I've never seen before, like, that's undeniable. I can't get a degree for that, but it's undeniable,
Yes.
right? So what resonates with you as I reflect that back?
Yeah, I think about that too. Like, all of that resonates with me, because I think I spent 6 years. Well, I spent so many years with this time of my life, not explaining, not realizing, but thinking this was the life I was supposed to live. And then thinking, if I do one more year of energy work, then I'll be credible. If I do one more training, then I'll be credible. If I do 50 more sessions, then I'll be credible. Credible to who? Credible to who?
It's a great question. Credible to who?
Yeah, that's the title. Credible to who? Like,
So if you were to answer your own question, who do you need to be credible to?
I just need to be credible to me.
And why is that difficult for you to accept?
I think that goes back to like not feeling enough, right? Like I think, which is my own piece. This is very good. This is a really good. This is so good. Yeah, I think that goes back to like it's the same. Well, like when I coach anyone else, like I want that you don't need to explain to anyone. But yeah, okay. Yeah. Ask me it again.
So why is it so hard? Because the question was, who do I have to be credible to? Well, okay, I see it's myself. Why is it so hard for you to accept that you need to be credible to yourself?
Because if I actually accept that I am credible to myself, then this, I think, like, I actually accept that I'm credible to myself. I think that it's like that's this is going to be like I almost stop myself from saying it. I don't want to be that big.
Mm.
That feels scary to me.
So if you were to succeed
Mhm.
at the level that you fundamentally have that inkling of in the back of your head that you're capable of, the bigness, the exposure, the light being shined your way, the polarity coming your way of handling the responsibility of being there, that part is worse than staying small.
Mhm.
Why?
This is so interesting. Um, I think because I've been told that those who are that big are untruthful.
So who would be offended if you got big?
I think many people I care about.
And obviously you don't have to name names or anything like that, but like friends, family,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah.
And then
So
so it's, yeah, I think that's an interesting, I've never really thought about that. Um, but I think then it's the thought of me having to explain again, right? So I think without even realizing it, I've done that.
done what?
Um, like I fear how big this could be because I don't want any, like there's a lot of judgment of big.
So one of the original questions that spurred this up was who would get offended if you were big?
Yeah.
Right. And your immediate went, okay, well, it would be people close to me.
Mm.
So them being offended, what does that mean about you?
Well, it means, well, I have to answer more about myself.
So is it really about them being offended, or about you having to step into the light and step into your power to be there and stand there?
Yes.
So what's so scary about stepping into your power?
Um, yeah, I think I haven't really, yeah. Like it honestly actually makes me feel ill. I think this is the, like I have, like, I think I see all these things that are starting to happen, all these things in a crazy fast amount of time. And each week it gets more and more. And then I almost sabotage it.
Right. Because if they were to pass and work, God forbid, then I actually start to get big. Then I actually have to explain myself. Then I actually have to provide my own credibility. Then I
Yes.
actually have to be seen for who it is that I truly am.
Yes. So right now it feels safe.
Right. So even if you just look at your voice, right, like your voice was one way sharing the
Yeah.
story, very expressive, very
Yes.
passionate. Oh my God, this is getting interesting. I never thought about this. Very expressive, very
Yes.
passionate. As soon as I began to question you on like, okay, so who's going to get offended? What does that mean about you? The
It's
constriction
tight.
started, right? Like you
Yes.
get smaller, your voice gets smaller. Like, let me not make a lot of noise. Let me answer it very superficially. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's a very wounded, scared part of you, very
Mhm.
likely, inner child type thing that has tremendous fear
Mhm.
about doing this. Like you could even trace back your story. Like, why did I spend 6 years exhausting myself,
Yes.
working for free, despite all of the like very quick results I was getting with people? Well, because if I owned it 3 years in as opposed to 6 years in, then I'd have to face the thing that I'm facing right now. So your business expansion has much less to do with your tactics, much more to do with your energetic constriction and fear around actually succeeding at this.
Mind blowing. It's actually really incredible because I feel so much. The thought, like what I'm feeling right now is having me like I can't talk.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a very visceral,
It's
somatic constriction here. Like this is beyond just I have a mindset issue. This is, you
I
know,
know.
some type of, and I'll use trauma as a general description of it, right? Without knowing
Yes.
your history or whatever. But like this kind of nervous system reaction is hardcore nervous system panic
I know.
for what it means for you and your association with bigness and stepping into the light. And really, I think deeper, it's owning your authentic self in its
Yes.
how it takes up space. Like that's, I think, the scariest part for you, right?
Yes.
So
So
yeah.
what does that, and I'm sorry, this is a podcast and I went silent. I apologize.
Okay. Happens all the time. It's all good.
What does that mean, do you think, for what steps you take? Given that this is what I do with people, like I support them to step into their authentic self.
So one
I'm
of the things
asking
I've
you
repeat
now.
quite a bit. Sorry.
I'm asking you now.
No, absolutely. So one of the things I often repeat on the podcast is the line of like, it's hard to see the building when you're standing on the balcony,
Mhm.
right? Meaning it's much more difficult to work on yourself because you have to both create the container for the observation, both be the facilitator to move through it while also holding the whole container and then like actually processing what's coming up. It's by no means impossible, but it's not the funnest or the quickest way through, right? Which
Right.
is why so oftentimes healers have such a hard time asking for help with the healing because it goes back to that I'm not good enough wounding. If I can't solve my own problems, what am I doing actually solving other people's problems?
Mm.
Right. So
Yes.
that's kind of a broad picture answer to your question. More specifically, what you are experiencing certainly has an energetic component to it, which is, your bread and butter. But there's also then the somatic nervous system component to it, like more of the body component to it, and learning how to self-regulate through experiencing filling up space, right? So
Mhm.
that's a skill set within itself. And then there is the mental component of like, how do I manage and work through the stories? How do I bring back the aspects of me and reconnect to the aspects of me that caused this original wounding and then perpetuate it? And then how do I reconcile all of the pieces and step into the wholeness, right? Like if I could give you a step-by-step area of like where you need to look,
Yes.
that's it. Obviously we can't do that in the confines of one, podcast episodes, but ultimately like that's the work that I do more privately. But if you're looking at a broad perspective,
Right.
that's really what you're looking to do. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So
So
what's
what
coming up? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I so when you do these, you typically would find a person would just be going along and you coach them, and then is it typical that you would have somebody have what happened to me just now?
It's pretty typical in the podcast. I wish I could give you an explanation as to like why, but usually within a very short amount of time, we get to the core issue of like what's behind, like the business is a vehicle to something that wants to emerge
Right,
internally, right?
right.
So yeah, for whatever reason, I don't know why, that's my gift. And like that's I'm very good at highlighting where we need to look.
Where it is
So
and why.
correct.
And then have you done this for yourself?
More times than I would like. Yeah, I've done this myself. I've gone through this myself. I crashed a business that I was operating for 10 years. So if you don't know my story, other people listening, so like I owned a brick and mortar weight loss center for 10 years, grew that to 4 staff, like hundreds of clients, and then that business imploded because I was missing all of these pieces. I just kept making decisions that were basically trying to prove my own self-worth to make the business successful. And I was making a lot of decisions only to then leave that business with like, after 10 years, like, all I have is a bunch of debt. So I had to crash my life in order to realize what I was actually doing. I'll learn all of these skills, and that's kind of what brings me to do this work
That's
now. Not just other people have to avoid that, but so that they can actually go to the next level
right.
with it. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just think it's interesting sitting here in this space. Like that's a it's a deep place to just sit to go like I've been sitting here now thinking like I was ready for whatever you were going to ask me. I did not think that was going to be what was going to.
Yeah, that's usually the best part. So you're
I
you're
assumed
welcome or whatever, like
I assumed it was going to be a money block or something, right? Like I knew I was blocking something. I just didn't think it was going to be that. So that's fascinating.
well, yeah, you're very welcome. And that's usually the case, right? It's usually where you're not looking or not willing to look. And
Yeah.
in yours, it especially makes sense because like your reaction was very visceral. Like it's not just like, oh, I didn't think of that way. You're right. Like that, I should reframe how I think about that.
Yeah.
That's fair. That needs to happen. But this is
Like,
like a freak out, right? Like it's like the reason you didn't want to look there, and the reason you keep self-sabotaging, and the reason that you're blocking the business from growth. It's literally a life or death interpretation as far as your nervous system is concerned,
right.
right? So that healing is going to be the part that's going to allow whatever business tactic is going to get you to the next level there. Like it's going to be the combination of both, right?
And so then you do that, you go in and then you go back into like sorry, now I don't know what our time is. I apologize. I'm just asking tons of questions, but now you just
That's
go
okay. Yeah.
back in and you answer those questions to support. Like, have you seen people through now to that? Like, I was reading some of your, do you go through to help them to that space?
Correct. So that would be more of obviously what we would do outside of a container like
Right.
this, right? Like the
Now I'm asking a
program
really,
in my coaching, correct. Like that would
right.
be, and that's, it differs person to person, but the general overarching thing that I see with, say, somebody like your, like, it's kind of like same but different. Like we all need to work on the mindset, we all need to work on expanding the body that can hold the success that we actually want, and then we all have to work on like combining basically like what I call embodiment, which is the lining up of my thoughts, feelings, and actions in accordance with what it is that I actually want,
Right.
right? For certain people, that's enough. And then we don't have to spend as much time on the self-regulation piece. For you, no amount of mindset work or like reframing how I'm going to do this or like pushing myself to do the actions is ever truly going to work, because like, you know, if you look at it energetically, right? Like your energetic signature from just like your mind doing things and like intending and visualizing and doing, it's like it puts out enough, but like the amount of energy your body in freak out mode is going to put out, like energetically, that's going to be dominant, which is what I'm saying. Like it's going to be very hard for you to move forward without addressing building the body that can first feel safe in its own success, and then expanding that body to take in the success you actually see for yourself, which is what I was saying before, taking in the responsibility, holding the polarity of both the good and the bad and what's going to come from that, actually facing the conversations you're probably going to have with the people that you imagine are going to judge you right now, and then stepping into that light to hold it so that's normalized. It's not just like I've stepped in and I've pulled back. Like that in totality is like what I see for you, which I know is just like a general look here, but that's kind of the process that you see. So I don't know if that answered your question or made you more confused, but that's
No,
that's
it
what I
makes
got.
sense. I mean, that's why you need to have all of the, I get it.
Perfect. So in that case, I mean, again, just because of this container with the podcast, etc., like, does this feel complete for you, or is there still something left outstanding?
No, there's so much left outstanding. Are you kidding?
Well, that part I'm happy to dive into with you outside of this, but as far as the container for
Containers.
this, okay, perfect. So why don't you then just summarize it in your own words? You know, what was your experience coming into this, going through it, and kind of any highlights or takeaways in your own words?
Well, uh, I came into this very open-minded. I was very excited to have this conversation. I always love to have it. And I was prepared that I was going to be a little shaken. What are the highlights or takeaways? I am supposed to be quite bright and there is much more for me, but unless I do some deep work, I will not find that true authentic light.
I agree. And I would add the nuance that it's not said about finding the light. I think it's already there.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually just about letting it shine.
Right.
Right. So regardless, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for coming this boldly into this process. Like I said, I'm always appreciative of people that do that. So why don't you just close us off, let everybody know where to find you. You can shine your light here right now, where to find you, who's the best person to find you. Floor is yours for that.
Yes. So you can find me at Blissful Intuitive, as well as at www.blissfulintuitive.com. I also have a podcast, The Girl Out There. You can find me there. Think I need to have you on that. And who's best to work with me? Everyone. So I work with men, women, and children, and currently now working with first responders as well, with a detachment therapy, working with PTSD and trauma. And yeah, it's I feel honored to be here.
Well, it was an honor having you on the show and allowing you to experience we need experience to,
Yeah.
take the next steps, whatever they may be. So thank you very much for coming on, and for everybody listening, we'll see you on the next one.